Alrighty. First of all, I'm going to put a timer on for 10 minutes because I don't want this video to be much longer than that at all. And I feel like I could talk about this too much. So timer's on. I'll be keeping an eye on that. We're looking at code.org Unit 3, Lesson 5. This talks, it's like we're starting to get into JavaScript, starting to get into some programming concepts. This one in particular is talking about variables. Now there's the intro bubble and the video, and you really should watch those as well because it's good information and read through that as well. But I'm going to go through a couple bubbles here and just take some time to talk about, I'm just checking the clock, talk about like what a variable is conceptually and how we're going to make it and use it and like what it's good for in programming languages. It's a really, really big deal. So it says over here, in this program, the variable x position is used to store the x coordinate of the circle. And it says to run the program to see how it works, and then change the number that is stored into the variable and run the code again. So we're going to run it, and there's a circle right over there. And we're going to change this number. It was 50. Let's try, I don't know, 90. And if I reset and run, you can see the ball was like to the left before, and this is now a little bit more to the right. If I go, I don't know, like 300, it's going to go pretty far to the right over there. Now, let's look at these two lines kind of in particular and just see exactly what's going on. And I'm actually going to switch this to text mode because I'm a little more comfortable playing around with text. So in text mode, it shows the exact same thing. By the way, text and block mode are the same thing, right? It says variable x position and then equals 300. The block it's a variable block. The name of the variable is x position and it's set equal to 300. And this is the very first thing to talk about with variables. Well, there's probably a better first thing to talk about. We're talking about this now. Whenever you want to make a variable, you have to start in JavaScript at least by saying var for variable, space, and then the name that you want to give that variable. It can be anything that you want. It could be x or y or x position like we see over here. It could be cat or dog or window, whatever you want. Just usually it's good to come up with good variable names so that when you use the variable later in your program, you can like see what it's supposed to be for. And then finally, so you can start by just making a variable and having that be it and just ending the line there. Or you can say the single equal sign, which we will say like assign the value and then some value. So we created a variable named x position and we assigned it the value of 300. So now let's talk about, we saw how to create a variable in JavaScript. Let's talk about what a variable is. A variable is, it kind of works how, like, sort of like how it works in math class, but not perfectly. It's like when you're substituting things in math class. Everywhere that you see the word x position anywhere later on in the program, that is going to have the value that the variable is holding on to right now. Now, you can go ahead and change that, right? I could say, you know what? X position was 300. I'm going to set X position equal to 50 now. And the variable X position is, you know, somewhere stored in your computer. At first, it was storing the value 300 when I first set it to 300. When I did this ellipse and I'm drawing a circle on the screen and I say X position here, it goes to that place in your computer where X position is stored, checks to see what value it's storing, which is 300 at the time, because programs go from the top to the bottom, starting at line 1 going down until we start learning about loops and if statements and stuff like that. It goes there, it says, all right, X position is 300, so then it will substitute 300 in for wherever you see the variable. Later on in the program, I could then say, you know what, I'm going to take X position and I'm going to change it to 50. And so then if I make another shape, I'll say X position and 200. Now when I make this other shape, when I run it, the rectangle that I drew here is going to be at the new X coordinate 50, which maybe I can zoom in over here, right? The new X coordinate 50, like we said, you can see my mouse is just about at 50. and then the y coordinate that I just kind of hard coded into there. So that's the first thing, is you can make a variable by saying var, the name of the variable, and then the value, or you can make a variable by dragging in a variable block and then changing the name and the value. And then to use the variable, you just go, like as you're moving through your program, you use the name of the variable to get the value that it's holding. Okay, let's keep going and see some examples as to why you would even want to use a variable. And just checking time. Whew. All right, we're 5 minutes through. I'm skipping this one because that kind of covers what we did before. You can figure that one out on your own, read through it, try it out. Okay, here's an important little thing to talk about. So right now, we've got the circle, and the only thing I'm going to say here, we made a variable circle size, and if you want, here's kind of like the first reason why you would use variables, is you can reuse the same variable multiple times in the program, or even the same variable multiple times when you're putting in the parameters or the arguments for a function that you're calling, right? So here's the ellipse call, the ellipse function call. It's going to be at location 200, 200, and the width and the height, is it width and height or height and width? The width and the height is going to be both based on the circle size. And this way, if I want to change the width and the height, instead of having to change the width and then the height, since I know they're going to be the same, I can just change one variable here, circle size, and so when I run it, it will change both the width and the height because circle size is controlling the width and the height of it. Let's keep moving forward because I want to see, there's at least one more example I wanted to hit before we close this video out. Okay. Okay, here's another really big example as to why you might want to use variables. So here they're making a flower. Let's zoom out and take a look at it. They're making a flower sort of thing, and they have 4 different petals that are different petal sizes, right? If you wanted to change it to make it look more, just different or something like that, I would have to change, if I wasn't using a variable, petal size 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different times for the 4 petals around there, for the width and the height for each of them. But if I know the petals are all going to be the same, I know I can just say, hey, I'm going to make a variable called petal size that I'll use anytime I'm making a circle that's going to be the petals of my flower. And that way, if I want to edit this, instead of changing 8 different parameters every time, I can just use the variable and say, hey, you know what, 50, this doesn't look like a nice flower. Maybe I'll make it 80 instead, and it will change it for everyone all at once. That's looking kind of more flower-like, right? Do I dare go into the last part? There's 2 minutes left. Let's do it. Let's do it. And I can go over time, make it like a 12-minute video. That's not that unreasonable. I'll let you guys practice fixing the errors. I wanted to talk about the random thing over here on this last bubble. So let me... Oh, I think this is actually a better spot for me when I'm doing these. Okay. So here's a really cool other thing is, just go away. Okay. Just like we saw the random values in the other spot, but when you put, in the previous lesson, when you put random number into a thing, like into a parameter, an argument, it takes up a lot of room. And instead I could just say, hey, random number is to I size, and then I size every time I run the program will start out by getting a random number between 10 and 60. So let's see, if we run this right now, there's only one I that's changing its size randomly. And if you look at it, so we've got these comments. We saw comments back in HTML. Comments in JavaScript have a little double slash, and I'm going to switch this back over to text. When you want to make a comment in JavaScript, you just put like 2 little slashes. It turns green, and this is just to tell us what's going on. So it's like, all right, I made a variable I size. We said no stroke, so there won't be like an outline around things. Background is green. This comment here is saying, all right, this part over here is going to make the face. I'm going to fill it yellow, make my circle. The eyes, I'm going to fill black, and here's where our issue is from before, right? We wanted to make both eyes change size randomly, but it seems like only one of them changed randomly. And if you look closer, or look closely, that's because only one of the two circles that I'm using for eyes is using the eye size variable for the width and the height. And the eye size variable, I can look back up over here. We're almost done. I can look back up over here onto line 1 to say, oh, eye size I know is being assigned a random value between 10 and 60 every time I run the program. So when we get to line 12, the two eye size for the width and the height are always going to be the same random number that was chosen on line 1. But here on line 13 for the other eye, it's just the width and the height is always 10. So it's not changing. We'd have to either put random numbers in there or put the eye size in for those guys. That's my 10 minutes. Hopefully this was helpful if you were having some trouble walking through this. And, maybe it's just good to hear a person speak it out a little bit when we're talking about why variables are used and how to use them. Yeah. See you next time.